All right. The January 27, 2026 Forest Grove School District Board of Directors work session is called to order at 5:30 p.m. We are going to start right off with Dr. West and talk about the superintendent mid-year reflection. We'll follow that with some time for the school board to do a little work on a mid-year reflection of our own. So with that, I'm going to pass it.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start by orienting us to what we hope to accomplish today. As Chair Kotke said, I'm going to share a little bit of information about how the year has gone so far, but then we will transition to a board mid-year reflection as well. And just to remind everyone, we have a hard stop at 6:30 because we do have a very short business meeting that we will conduct after this work session, because we have some business items that we need to take care of. So before I really dive into the content I want to share today, I want to orient the board to something that is a little bit different than for the two of you who experienced this last year. Last year, as we were figuring out what does the superintendent evaluation look like, we were using the OSBA and COSA rubric, and we had landed on 3 different domains. And in order to provide a reflection of those domains, I had accumulated a lot of artifacts throughout the year, artifacts that could be reviewed. What is different this year, as a reminder, is that we decided the work sessions would be the artifacts. So in that first work session, we met for about 2 hours, a little bit longer than that, I think. And we reviewed a great amount of data. Those data are in your packet. So you have a copy of the presentation from that, I believe it was October 28th meeting, that you can go back and review. And then for this work session, there's some additional information that I'm going to share with you here shortly that we committed to bring in January. And that also informs a portion of the superintendent evaluation. Before I move on to the next slide, I do want to emphasize we are in the middle of our year, and we've talked about this before. This cycle feels weird because we're having a conversation about an evaluation that you're going to start writing as a school board in about 2 months, and you will still have several months of the school year in front of you. So that feels a little out of sync, and I just want to acknowledge that. But we're going to do the best that we can with the timeline that we have in front of us based on what the state requires. Okay, so as we go through this, please make this a conversation. If you have questions, just ask them in the moment. This is a work session, so while we still need to adhere to public meeting rules, it is a little less formal than what we would expect in a regular business. So one of the items that I committed to bring to this work session was a recap of where we're at with professional learning for the school year. When we met in October, we shared with you survey data based on the professional learning that we had done so far, which was just a couple of things. Since then, we've actually done quite a bit, and you can see that on the screen behind me or on the monitor there, if that's easier for you to see. These professional learning experiences fall either in pre-service, which we've talked about before, scheduled professional learning days. We have instructional leadership learning that we ask our school leaders and our district leaders to participate in once a month. We also have leadership clinics that we hold with our leaders once a month. And then there are additional trainings that occur, some on an as-needed basis, but also based on a specialty of a particular employee group. For example, the biliteracy, dual language programming, professional learning is specifically targeted towards those instructional staff that are supporting our dual language program. And so these are all the efforts that either have already been completed or are underway and will continue throughout the school year. One of the things that we are learning how to do as an organization and also as a leadership team is do a better job with AI. So we asked for these next couple of slides for our AI tool to help us conceptualize what do all of these trainings tell you about the school district. And this is what they came up with, which is not moving. I can read it. There you go. So I thought this was pretty snazzy. This was made with a tool called Notebook LM. And again, we are learning how to use AI, like a lot of people right now around the world. But what I found that is fascinating about this is the prompt that was put into the system was take a look at all of these different professional learnings that we've done throughout the year and the purpose of those different professional learnings and how would you visually conceptualize this. And what was returned was this tree with these interwoven trunks and branches that all seem to be coalescing around leadership development and specialized support. And I think that's a fair way to characterize the work of the first half of the school year. With this, you can get a little bit of the context for what we put into the tool. The neat thing about Notebook LM, if you're interested, is that it doesn't hallucinate. It only uses the tools that you put in, the references that you actually put into the document. And so these are the descriptions that we put in for these different types of trainings that we were focused on. So this will continue throughout the year. It's really important. As I have learned more about the district in the past, well, I guess it's been 19 months now. The one thing that has become abundantly clear to me is that we need a real deep dive on professional learning in this district. We need to dig deep into instruction and reset some instructional practices. You saw in the table that we had that we've started some of that work, but we also need to focus on the learning that our leaders need to be successful leaders of their schools or their departments. We have also surfaced, I have surfaced over the past 19 months, and with this team have helped to understand that everybody's working hard and doing what they absolutely believe is right for kids, but that effort has not been supported with the kind of professional learning that allows us to accelerate change through the system. So we're gonna focus on that. We're gonna make some changes over the next couple of years to really ensure that our leaders have the support that they need to lead well. So before I move on to the next slide, what questions do you have? Okay. We can go back as well. Thank you, Enrique. I don't think this is going to do it for me tonight, so I just call out next slide, please. I'm going to orient you to this, and then David, do you mind saying a few words about engagement? Okay. So similar to the other slide, we committed to bring you some engagement information for the first half of the year. And as we started to think about, well, what are the different ways that we've engaged our families, we realized we engage our families in a lot of different ways. And it's not limited just to the people you see around the table here. Engagement happens almost every day in all of our schools in an informal way, and then in a more formal way pretty regularly as well. So I will turn it over to David for some conversation about this.
Yeah, so Dr. West asked me if I could do a little data exercise. And so I started off just kind of revisiting people's calendars to find the events that were on school calendars, our individual cabinet calendars, other staff within the district on what events and opportunities that were going on in the community. So I was able to coalesce, I don't know, I didn't count those, but quite a few opportunities starting from July 1 when we started this new school year up through, a couple of days ago. And so as we're seeing on this little chart here, we tried to break them out into some categories. From student and parent listening to arts and athletics, school engagements, cultural outreach, and civic alignment. So there's some stuffy categories for you, but I think the learning is there are a lot of activities like Dr. West said, that our staff, our cabinet members have the opportunity to engage with our community, both in, very serious, important ways, from our student listening sessions at the high school to parent trainings at the various elementary schools, to arts and athletic events that are a little bit more light and fun, but are no less important than to being in the community, to interact with our community members and be there present, to show that we care about our community. Just a little bit of a caveat on this arts and athletics one. I did not include the literally hundreds of opportunities there are from our middle school and our high school athletic events in there. So that's kind of a truncated category, but from our music concerts, mariachi performances, theater performances, unified sports and unified theater opportunities, there's almost innumerable opportunities for us to be out in the community, being present, showing that we care about our students, care about our community members, to be there, to have the informal conversations, to be asked questions, to inform our families and parents and students of what's going on in the district, what's important to answer questions that they might have, across the board, from our extracurricular activities to our instructional activities and goals, so across the board. So this was just a little bit of a little option to show you what's going on out there just in the first half of our school year. And again, the next slide, similarly, we threw it through AI. And if you are more of a visual learner, then this give you a little bit more creativity to see the different categories kind of broken off into community and civic partnerships and school and student connections. And they kind of ramped up, obviously, as we went through the year, opportunity increased. So, yeah.
Thank you, David. And what I'll add to that is we had a lot of conversations last year about engagement, because in my early months, and a couple of you will probably remember this, we set up some meet and greets with the new superintendent, and we advertised some engagement opportunities. And in all of those, we might have had 5 people show up. And asking ourselves the questions, why, we would have thought people would have been curious to meet the new superintendent and to have some conversation. Where I think we landed is that people are busy. And if we want to hear from our families, from our students, from our community, we have to be in the spaces where they are, rather than expecting them to come to us. So we've made an effort to find those spaces. As David articulated, some of them are really natural. If I'm sitting in the football stands, people talk to me. If I'm in the bleachers at the high school or at AMS, people talk to me, and that's a great, that may seem small, but that is a way to engage in two-way conversation with our community. But then we also have had a booth at the farmers markets so that we can interact with people who just want to stop by and ask us some questions. We have the bond oversight committee. We have the district equity committee now. We have conversations that we have at conferences. There are many different ways that we are engaging directly with our community to try to learn what their education experience is like for their students and what they hope for from our schools. In a regular year, I think I would have a lot to share with you about parents' aspirations for students who are graduating and what they're learning in schools. And I still do hear some of that. I will tell you that this year, what I am hearing most frequently from our families is concern about student safety. And so that has been a primary point of conversation for me around the community, is talking to our families, talking to our neighbors, and talking directly to students about what are the things that we're doing to ensure that students are safe while they're in school. before I move any further, what questions? Can I answer?
I'm trying to frame one about this, our deep concern of student safety. And I keep on circling back to Maslow and trying to figure out how we can get across that this, not just to our students, our client, but also to parents and other members of the public. And to cast that net even broader back to people who are or should be partners with us in how to remove some of those concerns about safety so that we can get down to the business of education. And I include the community writ large in that, in the federal government, state government, county government, city government, all of that, as to what kind of coordination can we do to make damn sure that when a kid goes out the door, he's going to be safely escorted or guided to a safe environment to learn, where he can concentrate on that and not concentrate on whether or not his world is going to be turned upside down when he goes home. Or when she goes home. And I did a very poor job there of trying to shorten that question. But that's one of the last things I think about when I go to bed at night is what kind of educational system, what kind of safe educational system are we going to leave when we go off someplace else, when our job here is done, if it ever is. And I want to leave this school district in a safe place. Safe place for kids, safe place for teachers, safe place for all of our employees and for all of our patrons. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but and then it goes back to Maslow, and when you have all of these safety concerns, you really don't really don't care a lot about parsing sentences or quadratic equations. Not that I ever could do quadratic equations, but and that's why I threw Maslow in there. Two reasons: one, that always concerns me, and two, it makes me sound smarter than I am.
I think you're right, Director Truax, that kids need to feel safe, students need to feel safe, psychologically as well as physically safe, in order for them to learn. Those two things must be present. And so that is something that we have top of mind right now as a school district, and that we're working hard to achieve. Your point about others stepping forward to support this. One of the engagements on there is civic and legislative alignment. I think in this early part of the 26-27 school year, 25-26, what year are we in? 2026. So 25-26 school year. I will tell you, I have spent more time talking to elected officials in these early months than in any other school year. Our elected officials are engaging, they're asking questions. And locally, they know that Western Washington County is one of the areas that has been most significantly impacted by immigration enforcement. So they are asking how they can help. There are some bills that I have taken a look at that have been proposed in the short session at the state legislature that people are attempting to address some of the concerns. I don't know how those bills will play out, but I do know the concerns about immigration and the impact to students and to schools is top of mind for many people around the state. Other questions before I move on?
I have a question. So with the monthly engagement, August, October, November, when you evaluate I thought the Saturday market where, staff and board members participated, I thought that was a great idea. Have you evaluated how effective these different activities through these 3 months have been?
Not in the same way we do for professional learning. Mostly because it's challenging to do so. A lot of these engagements, like at the farmer's market, just based on anecdotes, and for the cabinet members who were present at that, please feel free to jump in. I think over the course of 5 or 6 engagements, including at Cornelius, we saw maybe a couple hundred people that stopped by. Does that seem right?
Yeah.
Okay, so somewhere in that ballpark or a little bit lower. And we didn't issue a survey when we were talking to people. We just answered their questions about the school year that's coming up or talk to them about their students' experience being in the theater. So that in and of itself has some value, but we didn't measure that.
Because I thought that was a great opportunity because that's going where the people are.
Yeah.
It's an informal and casual environment and it gives the people, a way to come up and approach you in a very, friendly manner. Will you continue this?
Of course, yeah. The other thing that's not on here that I think is important to point out is that we send home regular communication to our families, and I'll use the Bond newspaper as an example. We've done that twice since I've been superintendent here, where everyone within the Forest Grove School District boundary gets a newspaper copy in their mailbox of the progress with the bond promise. And the number of people that stop me and first of all appreciate the updates, but they're just tickled to get a newspaper in their mailbox. And really appreciate that is a method of communication that the school district is engaged in. And so while that is not the same as having a conversation on Main Street with a family and their students, there's value in that too. Our community is at least expressing that they find value. I think Risa, go ahead.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about expanding engagement and some ideas regarding families who don't feel comfortable and or safe going to these events. Alternatives to engagement, what that could potentially look like, or if there are any ideas.
Yeah, one of the things I've been considering, I had a conversation with other superintendents in the area a couple months ago, and 2 of those superintendents have transitioned their engagements to an online format. And that is something that may be beneficial for us to consider as well. If we open up that engagement opportunity, I want to make sure it's meaningful, that we have a purpose for inviting families into that space, even if it's a virtual space. So I don't quite have that sorted out yet, what that could look like, but they expressed that they had really good participation. And so that is something that I think we should look at. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to rock and roll through a few of these here. Moving to the next slide. This was not something I promised to bring you, but I'm so excited about this that I had to throw it in there. So one of the things that you have come to know about me is that I really appreciate data as a way to inform what we know about our district, that we know about the impacts of our effort. And informing our decisions, so that we're using real information to help make the best decision. And to that end, about a year ago, we invited into our district a true data analyst. And she has been throughout this past year learning about us, but also learning how to help us have our systems make sense to us and how to turn data into information. You have seen some of that play out in the different reports we've brought forward, like the literacy data and math data. Recently, I've, shared with the board that we've had quite a few withdrawals for this year. And some of the reasons why we think students are withdrawing. The slides that I'm going to run through here briefly are a way to visualize that information. And it makes much more sense looking at it this way than just in a table. It's easier to make some inferences regarding why students are leaving our district when you see it laid out this way. So just briefly, this particular slide has both table information, similar to what we shared before, just raw numbers, but it also breaks it down by the reason for the student withdrawal. And then it includes external transfers as well. So students who have left our district for other districts and we know about it, and then students who are moving within our district. And then the next couple of slides, similar information, but it breaks down by demographics. One back, please. There you go. Breaks it down by demographics, grade level, EL status, for example, as well as by race. And then if you move to that third slide, then we can see the distribution across all schools. And so I brought this forward because one of the things that I think is really important for us as a cabinet, for me as a superintendent, is that when I'm saying things like we need to focus on the improvement of instruction, I want to make sure that I have data that actually backs that up, that I can point to some information to say, I know this is an area we need to focus on because these data tell us that it's a gap for us. So I'm excited about the way our data systems are developing and the way we'll be able to use these tools in the future. Any questions before I move past the commitments for this work session and dive right into a little reflection?
I can't read the print on this, for the code.
We'll get you the big.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. My eyes can't do it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. In fact, we'll send you a link so you can play around with it because you can select the boxes that you see there and look at a smaller data set at a time. Okay. All right, so getting into my reflection, I'm not going to read all these slides to you, and I do want to share with you, you have a narrative in your packet. I'm also not going to read that to you. You can go back and read that on your own, but I'm going to run through this quickly and share with you some of what I've learned over the past several months of this school year. Starting with, I started with moving beyond relationship building to grounding and understanding of the district's strengths, constraints, and urgent needs. Relationship building still matters, but last year was a lot of just meeting people and figuring out who are the players in the district, who are the players in the community, being exposed to people, getting out and about. That still matters and that will still continue. But for this year, really focusing on, now that I think I have a better understanding of the district, where are urgent needs? And I've already brought up one. I think the improvement of instruction is an urgent need for us. And then what are our strengths and our constraints? Strengths include things like the incredible staff in this district. I am blown away by the commitment of our educators, our administrators, our support staff, our families, and their commitment to their kids' education. It's remarkable. So that is definitely an asset that we can build on. And then there are some constraints. We have federal constraints and we have state constraints, and trying to work within that can be very challenging. But I feel like that we are ready to undertake that work and really accelerate our efforts in these areas. In terms of the external landscape, thank you, Enrique, for keeping it up. Even though I'm not calling it out loud at this point. Immigration enforcement has significantly impacted us. As you saw from our withdrawal data, we've had a lot of students leave. And for context, in all of the prior school year, we only hit 300. So it was just under 300, if I remember correctly. So we're on track to surpass that for this year. Immigration enforcement has impacted our attendance rates. We're several percentage points higher in our absence rates than we were for the same period of time last year. And even more than that, the fear and the stress and the anxiety that this is causing in our community, it does have an impact on students and staff in our schools. And one of the things we've done to address that, I want to thank Kim and her team. They were great about putting together some resources that we were able to share recently with our school leaders and our department leaders, because they're on the front lines working directly with students, working directly with staff. And we really needed to give them the tools to continue to provide that support. So we are responding as rapidly as we can to these efforts to make sure that students are safe in our schools, psychologically safe, physically safe. Same goes for staff who are impacted by this enforcement. There's also a ripple effect that I want to address. Absences are rooted in disruption often. And those disruptions at home, they have an impact when students aren't at school and when students are at school. Staff carry the emotional weight. I have stood in a classroom where the teacher was talking to a room full of littles about the emotion fear. And if you haven't experienced that, it is really heart-rending to have a teacher with a bunch of littles telling their teacher, I'm afraid for my parents' safety. That's a lot of emotional weight for staff to carry. And so that ripple effect we are feeling. And as a community, I would suspect we will be feeling it for a generation. I don't think this is going to end soon. I think we're in it for the long haul. And the long-term effects of what staff and students are feeling, we won't know the full effect of that for many years. Our data realities, I've already shared some of that with you, so I won't spend too much time here, but I do want to point out that because of the absences, we are experiencing the increase in absences because students are not at school as much. We are starting to see that impact in our data, and that will ultimately show up in our longitudinal performance growth targets. Maybe not all of them, but we will see it in some of them. So those metrics that the state expects of us, I've already psychologically prepared myself that we're not going to hit all of them as hard as everyone is working. So the main thing is instructional focus. I've already said this. As I have observed in classrooms, I've noticed inconsistency in instructional quality, inconsistency in alignment, and inconsistency in the use of data across our schools. That's on us. That's a leadership problem. That is not a teacher problem. So that is something that we need to fix. That said, we are seeing pockets of growth. So over the past year and a half, in the conversations that we've been having with staff, with the tools that we've been implementing, especially the new assessment tools that were implemented a couple of years ago, we are starting to see steep growth. But it's going to take a while for the shifts in practice that we require of our colleagues to really take root. I will tell you, as somebody who wants that change to happen right now, I am impatient. But I also understand that change takes time. New habits take time, new practices take time. And we have to all move together in order to see the instructional improvements that we want to see. So while I'm feeling a sense of urgency, I'm also well aware that this is a multi-year process that we have undertaken. In terms of the systems supporting our schools and operational health, we're in a pretty good place and we have work to do. Our district office systems, they need some attention. They have not kept pace with, not all of them have kept pace with the changes at the state level and that are required in our school district. We have some processes in HR that are outdated and need to be modernized. Curriculum has not always provided the level of support that our school district needs. So again, that's on us. That's an us issue, and we're working on it. The folks that you see at the table here, and even those who are not with us here today, I can tell you are absolutely committed to this work. They're in it and working hard to make sure that we are providing what we need to our schools, but we've got some catch up to do. In terms of the goal, we're working on the structures that let principals lead and let teachers teach. We owe that to them, so we're working hard on that. So the literacy shift, this shouldn't be new to anyone in this room. Senate Bill 141 imposed new requirements without corresponding resources. And it changed accountability for us. We have yet to realize the full impact of that, but just a couple of the things to point out. We are going to have to make a decision about math and STAR. We will no longer be able to use M-Class as our elementary benchmark assessment tool. So that's going to be a cost to the district. Negotiating a new contract with either math or STAR to expand services. We may end up in a situation where we have to buy out the M-Class contract. I don't know that yet. We haven't gotten that far. We will have to train staff. We're going to have to build crosswalks so that the M-Class data correlates to whatever data system we land on for our new benchmark. We're going to have to develop some new intervention plans because M-Class actually provides our staff with intervention groups based on student performance and with lessons to support those groups. That pool is not going to be available to us in the near future. So there's quite a cost to our district based on this legislation. Real cost to our district based on this legislation. One of the most difficult costs to navigate is the cost of change. So we once again are going to have to go to our teachers and say, we need you to do something different. We'll have to navigate that. It's a law now. There's nothing we can do about it. But I'm really mindful of that. And I am trying with this team that you see here to lay the groundwork so that when it comes time for us to introduce this change, we have everything in place that we need and our schools are ready to.
When does this bill take effect?
It's already in effect. So the Department of Education right now is working through the rulemaking related to this. That's when it was the rulemaking recently that we learned that M-Class is not one of the approved benchmarks anymore. And for those of you who have some experience in this, M-Class is DIBEL. DIBELS has been around forever. It was designed by the University of Oregon. So that is not an approved tool for us going forward for our benchmark assessment. So we have a little bit of a window. It doesn't go into effect today, but we don't have very long to figure out.
Will we have to hire additional staff to support this accountability?
Maybe some of it, that is to be determined. I don't think we'll have to for this transition. My understanding is that this district has used STAR at all levels previously, and many of our teachers have used math. It's just not used K-12 right now, and it's been a while for some of our teachers since they've been in schools. So there will be some relearning. The one positive to this change is every tool that was approved has a Spanish literacy component. And that was a heavy lift for us. Many of us advocated for months to ensure that that was the case. Also, as I pointed out, we are mid-year and we are just wrapping up our testing window. So I don't have new literacy or math data for you, but we will bring that to you as soon as it's ready. The testing window closes this month. I want to pause for just a minute and talk about the District Equity Committee. Thank you, Enrique. As a smaller school district with less than 10,000 students, we were required to start the district equity committee this year. So we've done that. I want to thank Maya for ensuring that we got some students on the group. Thank you. They've been really helpful. The purpose of the district equity committee, as outlined in statute, is to advise the superintendent on policy improvements that will improve equitable outcomes for kids. So pulling this team together, and what I'm referring to as phase one of our work, I felt like we needed to anchor to something so that we could practice and develop our equity muscles. So we started with our district discipline data, and we looked at those data through an equity lens. If students, regardless of their race or ethnicity, regardless of their special education status, are they experiencing similar discipline outcomes across our district? And the short answer is no, they're not. We definitely have disparities in our discipline data. And the team that I'm working with, which is comprised of community members, students, and staff, they were very quick to point out that we have some work to do with the way we are exercising discipline in our schools. You can see there, particularly at the middle school level, and particularly for our Latino students, students receiving special education services have significant disproportionality in our discipline data. What I'm excited about with this team is they're up to the task. So where we're at right now is that this team is going to continue to dig into where we're at as a district, but a small subset of the team is going to work with me and probably Assistant Superintendent Loma Lee. Superintendent, did I say that? I did. Superintendent Loma Lee.
Change its business card.
Do that. To come up with some recommendations for discipline policies that point us towards those critical outcomes that we're hoping to achieve. So I'm really excited about that work. The next level of work with this team is we're going to dig into what we generally refer to as opportunity data, which is looking at, for example, at the high school, who is accessing our AP classes, who is accessing our CFP classes, who's being successful in those spaces. So although this particular committee was mandated by the state, it's kind of an awesome team. I'm really excited about the work that they're doing and happy to be a part of it.
A question for you. So the
Yes.
discipline data, you said there's some community members.
Yes.
We try to involve any parents, you know, who know our kids.
Yeah,
best.
there are a couple of parents on the team as well. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. And a couple of our are also parents. Yeah. Okay, collective bargaining agreement. This is something else I wanted to pause and reflect on. We completed our bargaining with FGSD at spring of last year, but our bargaining with OSEA really has progressed all the way until this month. In our last meeting with OSEA, we reached a tentative agreement on every article. That does not mean the contract is approved yet. For those of you who have been on the school board before, you know that we still need the association to do their work and vote, and then we need to bring the contract to the school board for ratification. So we're not quite done yet. But it was really nice to have every article TA'd at the conclusion of our last meeting. And many of the people in this room were part of that, and I think they would agree. As I reflected on that process, it was longer than I think it has been in the past. We were presented with every article by the association for the bargain, and I think that is not typical of the way OSEA has engaged this district in the past. So we had to go through every single article, and thank you, Director Truax, for hanging in there through all of that. And while those conversations at times were challenging, what I think came out of that is that it reinforced the values on both sides to listen, to understand, to make sure that we were bargaining in good faith with our colleagues and to honor what I think of as the essential role of classified staff in our district. So I think we ended in a really good place, feel very good about the tentative agreement that we have with the association right now. And I'm looking forward to bringing that contract to you after the association does their work to take vote. I'm going to go quickly through these next couple. The budget reality, we've talked about this in the boardroom before. We have revenue lost. We have forecasted reductions at the state level. It's unclear what the federal government is going to do at this point, and we have a structural deficit. Our costs are rising greater than the revenue that the state is giving us. This leads us to the point where we likely are going to have to make some staff reductions. We will do everything we can to not impact people, but at this point, given the projections, I don't know how we will get away with not reducing positions. So we will, of course, keep the board and our staff and the public apprised as we get closer to that, and we have a better idea of the reduction on the plan. But it seems inevitable at this point. I've been involved in reduction processes before, and as I've reflected on my time in this district, what I note here is that I think what's really matters in processes like this is the commitment that leadership, including the superintendent, makes to our community, to our school community. And we have to balance that fiscal responsibility with our future stability. So those two things have to be in balance with each other, and that can be tense as we enter into these conversations. We have to treat everyone with respect and care, regardless of what decisions we make. There is an impact to people, even if it's just asking them to move to another building because of a decision we made somewhere else in the organization. We need to be thoughtful as we enter into these decisions. And then we have to be transparent, we have to be steady, and we have to maintain that long-term perspective. In these reduction scenarios, there's a tendency to look at the immediate situation and the immediate impact, and that matters. What also matters is whether or not we are setting ourselves up for what comes tomorrow and what comes the year after that. Again, those things have to be in balance. In terms of advocacy and external relationships, talk quite a bit about this too. I think for the remainder of the year, continuing to maintain regular contact with both state and federal elected officials will be really important. As I said, I think we're in it for the long haul with the decisions that are being made at a federal level, and our state advocates and our federal advocates are important people to us right now. So maintaining those relationships, maintaining relationships with community leaders who are working really hard to support our schools, super important. I am still learning where the district's voice is most effective. I figured some of that out, but 19 months is not a lot of time in it. So that is still TBD, and I'm very open to that learning experience. And then in terms of the goal, keeping students at the center, I think, is vital. When we make decisions, when we advocate, we have to remember that we are doing this for children first and foremost, and make sure that we are speaking on behalf of our students who may not be able to speak directly for themselves. So looking ahead, progress sometimes feels slow and it's sometimes very fragile. But as I look around the district, I see it. I see teachers refining their practice. I see leaders asking better questions. I see students who are pulling aside the superintendent to say, hey, you need to take care of this. I love that. We're committed to staying the course with our strategic plan. We're committed to continuous improvement. And as long as we stay focused and we continue to support, we're going to make it. We're going to give our students everything that we need because they deserve our steadiness, they deserve our clarity, and they deserve our persistence. That wraps it up for me. What questions may I answer?
Before questions, I'm gonna make a couple adjustments here. I do want to allow for some questions. I have a couple questions. I also know we're gonna break at maybe 6:20 to move. What I'd like to look for is for an amendment to the existing agenda board when we get there. I would like, we need to honor, I want to honor the people who are here for presentations at 6:40. I will look for an amendment to add our mid-year reflection to the end of this agenda tonight. I think it's essential that we have that time, especially for Alma and I have leadership tomorrow and really wanted to use some of the thoughts that we gathered tonight and form a conversation to tomorrow. So I'll look for that, which will allow a few minutes now for questions and also keep us on time for.
Thank you for that.
Okay, sure. So let me open it up to questions. About what we heard. I really appreciate the thoroughness of the report and the honesty in where we need to improve, but really, Dr. West, how you frame this whole thing, and you can really feel that it's a collaborative effort of all, and owning who owns that pieces of the effort. So I really appreciated that. Questions from the board?
What is gonna happen to, the preschool Oregon Promise? Do we know what, if there gonna be dollars for them next year?
We don't know yet.
I mean, that's been such a really successful program, and I'm just watching over the last few years, seeing. I mean, I'm in the classroom right now where, kids are really, they know their letters, the majority of them know their letters, these 3 and 4-year-olds, and that'd be a tremendous loss for our district.
I agree.
Question for you. All these withdrawals that we're seeing, all these students, do we know where they're going or do we have no data on that?
In some cases, we do. Enrique, would you go all the way back to the first data slide? Please. That's it. So this is impossible to read. The way it's laid out right now.
For me.
Yeah, well, for many of us, what I want to draw your attention to is where you see the code. So it's code by school. Each one of those codes denotes a specific reason for leaving. So if you look, for example, and it might be hard to read this. Yeah, it's going to be tough to read this in your packet. But if you look, for example, at 1A, that code is same school and it says something else there that I can't read, it's too small. And then 1B is different school within the same district. And then it goes on from there. There are codes like left state, left country, and we have a few students that are coded that way. We also have a substantial number of students. At my last count, more than half of them, we don't know why they've left. More than half. So we don't know where they are or why they've left our district. And that is really concerning. I will tell you that our principals, in fact, I was talking with the principal about these data today, and he has asked his office staff to start reaching out to families for the students that we have lost track of, to see if we can track them down somehow. For a couple of reasons. One, we report these data to the state. So at a very transactional level, we want the data to be accurate and reflect what we know. But two, I wonder, and I have several principals wondering, are these students still here? And they're just afraid to come to school. And if that is the case, we want to know that because there is likely something that we can do to support them. Welcome.
I am gonna throw out a question. We won't have time to really dig into it, but I know that as a board, we'll have a time to talk about this. And it builds off of Alma's question about with engagement and just even professional learning is how are we evaluating the outcomes? How are we measuring the outcomes for those? And I think you talked about it a little bit, like for professional learning, you are able to see, we did this learning and now we're able to see this playing out in our classrooms. I do agree with the directors around the engagements of when we're doing the engagements. How do we know that people are feeling like that's the level of engagement they need? And to your point about the markets, what's really interesting is that everybody defines what they want from engagement differently. So some people, it was just knowing we were at the market was enough. They were just happy to see we were there. Other people wanted a few minutes to answer a question. Other people wanted to meet for coffee. So when you talk to people about it, you feel like the level of engagement is appropriate or giving you what you need. How do we capture the different needs and what does that look like and that's again, more time than we're gonna have tonight to discuss, but I know as a board, we've talked quite a bit individually around really thinking deeply about the impact of these. And are we providing enough different types of engagement so people can feel like they have a way to connect, but.
Well, I know that I see more engagement about schools and social media than I do engagement in person in any of the events that are hosted by a school district.
I think that's true.
Very much. And so there, a lot of the community is asking the community these questions versus coming to the school and ask it directly, or asking a principal, or asking, you directly. So I've seen a lot of that. A lot of engagement online, not enough engagement
In person.
in person. So what platforms do we have online to be able to direct?
That's a great question for you.
And I think we might pause here so we can, but I think let's count that. This is a conversation we will come back to as a board and probably it will come up in our piece today.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
What I want the board to hear is that this is an incredible district. Those who were here at the time I started heard me say this. There were only a couple of districts that I would work in the state, and Forest Grove is one of them. As hard as some of these things have been over the last 19 months, it is truly astonishing how the community and the staff have rallied. They are coming out to support our schools. They care about our youth. Our staff work their tail off. Everybody is working really, really hard. And I've said this before, and I think it's really important that the board understand the superintendent doesn't do this job alone. It's the people who are sitting at this table that are working hard every single day to create the structures and the support that our schools need. That really deserve some, I think, some accolades, not from the board necessarily, but from others, because it is a Herculean lift to keep things going under conditions like this. So thank you to my team who is sitting here at the table and doing this work every single day, and one who's sitting out in the audience. It matters. I see it, and I know that our students are benefiting. So thank you for that.
Perfect. Closing. We're gonna adjourn this meeting at 5:28, 6:28. Take a couple minutes, rearrange. Yep. And then we'll try to get started as quickly at 6:30 as we can. Thank you. Ready to roll? I'd like to call to order the January 27th, 2026 Forest Grove School District Board of Directors meeting at 6:35 p.m. We'll start with roll call of board members present. Alma Lozano.
Here.
Teresa Franco. Here. Kate Grandusky.
Present.
Pete Truax.
Here.
Maya Andrade. Here. And Christy Cocky. I am here. We're gonna rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
I'd like to amend the agenda and have the board self-reflection after action item. I'll second it.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent agenda a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately? Seeing none. I'll look for a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 And we're gonna move on to presentations. 2 minutes ahead of the 6:40. Our first one is financial audit report with David Bledsoe and take keys with Polly Rogers and co. Weaver online. Almost.
Good evening.
He's gonna cue it up for us. Hi.
Good evening. Can y'all hear us?
Yes, welcome. We're just getting some audio. Can you,
We can no longer hear you.
Okay.
I-
we're just waiting for a couple adjustments here.
Okay.
David, you want to try it again?
Yeah, can y'all hear us?
Yes, we can. Yes, welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us this evening. Please do let me know if at some point the audio starts being a little tricky on us. I think your IT is not going to be at our camp this evening. But I appreciate the board for having us. My name is David Bledsoe. I'm one of the audit managers here with Paul Rogers and Company. I've had the pleasure of working with the district now for several years on the annual financial audits. I'm joined by Tate Keys, who did a lot of the work as the lead auditor this year. I would like to take a moment to thank the board as well as the fine staff over at FGSD for working with us again this year to complete the audit. As a reminder to everyone, the financial audit we're discussing is a requirement under state and federal law. It's not because you did anything wrong like an IRS audit, just a matter of state law that we get an annual financial audit done on an annual basis. We're discussing the financial audit over the period ended June 30, 2025. So this information is a bit laggard in that way. So the budget information you've likely been receiving from the district for the past several months is reflective of a period after a report date. So it is helpful to conceptualize the period in which we're going over. During the fiscal year ended June 30, 2025, we did implement a new accounting rule this year. Those are referred to as GASBs, or statements issued by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This year, we implemented Statement 101, covering compensated absences. A brief bit on that, it changed the framework by which the district accrues for certain kinds of leave to expand beyond vacation to also include sick time, as well as some calculations surrounding that about the expected uses of sick time. Outside of that, as you are well aware, the district also finalized its Series 2023 bond sale. So an additional almost $32 million was drawn down from that debt package. As part of our audit, we do review those transactions to make sure that they land on the balance sheet or the listing of assets and liabilities correctly. If members of the board have a copy of the governing board letter available, I'd like to direct your attention to that as kind of a synthesis of our audit work. Numbered page 2 of 8, if to give everyone a moment to turn. Can someone give me like a heads up once y'all there?
Could be tucked inside the blue, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're set.
Perfect. Out of the results of the audit section, it's numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's perhaps the best synthesis of the work that we did as well as the results of that. To kind of walk you through that, the first one is the audit opinion letter. Notes that we issued an unmodified opinion. That is the one you want. That means the books were prepared consistent with GAAP or the generally accepted accounting practices. You followed the accounting rules. The books made sense. They were cogent. Books were balanced, so on and so forth. Our audit has 3 thematic parts. The first one is what I just discussed. It goes over the accounting rules, do the financial reports that we're looking at accurately reflect the district's activity as well as follow the rules. The second one goes over state requirements. That's things like reporting of teacher experience as well as adherence to bid quote rules. You know, if you're spending more than the allowable amounts, are you getting those contractor quotes? We did have one note there that references page 68 of the financial report. On page 68 of the financial report, yeah, that's numbered page 68 of the separate document. We do note 2 items. The first one does reference back to a different page in the financial report, page 17, to go over budget items. The second one was over teacher experience reporting. As a reminder to the board of how this works, these are things that we have an obligation to report on a binary basis. Dollar over on appropriations is reported the same way as $10 million over on appropriations. So there were, as noted on page 17, instances where the budget exceeded its authorized appropriation level. The third item on the board letter, page 2, refers to federal awards. That is your federal grants that you spend. The district regularly spends in excess of the threshold to meet what we refer to as a single audit requirement. That means we do kind of a mini audit just over federal program awards. This year, in addition to looking at the bond sale, we did 2 different single audits. We did a single audit over the remaining dollars from back in COVID of the ESSER program. The other single audit we did was over migrant education. Happy to report that in both of those instances, there were no comments, no findings. District passed without exception. The fourth item on the list just says we did not issue a management letter. A management letter is a way that we formally communicate a significant deficiency or material weakness. That is things that may lead to or did lead to a deviation of numbers that we consider to be impactful, or a failure in the design or operation of controls. And we didn't find either one of those. The only comment we have for the board as a recommendation is located on page 8 of the board letter. It is nearly the same comment that has been there every year since I can remember regarding the volume of bank accounts that the district maintains. It's just a recommendation to consider downsizing that. I will note that the district has drastically reduced the amount of bank statements that it has over the past 3 years, and they are endeavoring upon further reducing that to simplify that process within the business office. Outside of that, as far as the financial reports goes, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the design of the audit, the results of it, or how the numbers kind of flow around. On a general basis, I often advise boards to, pay attention to net position activities to understand what they do and do not convey well. By that I mean, these are numbered pages 1 and 2 of the financial report document. Net position is a government-wide balance sheet. That means that as things like the district's portion of the state's PERS indebtedness, that is, the state does not have a fully funded pension retirement plan for its employees. So a portion of that is expressed to every participatory government in Oregon. That does make you look financially worse off than you otherwise may be, since you do have a portion of the state's indebtedness on your books. In a similar way, you have long-term debt obligations. Conversely, you also have the capital assets that are often purchased with those long-term obligations. That reflects more of a long-term perspective. That's pages 1 and 2. As numbered, pages 3 and 5 are what we refer to as a fund level balance sheet and a fund level income statement. That is perhaps a better reflection of day-to-day operations. That shows exactly how much money you have tangibly, what resources are flowing into the government, whether it be property taxes or state general support. Conversely, that is what your appropriations reflect. That is the spending your business office can actually control. things of that nature. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have. I know I've got thrown a lot at you.
I mean, first of all, I really appreciate the work that you both do. I remember when I was first on the board and then the next year on the board, and I got this packet and I went to Eileen and was like, what should a board person be looking at, right? So I understand now in year 3 a little bit, I understand more of the work that you are doing. I appreciate the heads up to this is where a board should be paying attention. And this is a question we ask often, like, we don't know what we don't know. So I think the layout in the opening piece of the letter is something that went into my brain and could stick. We have a very strong team here where I can ask questions and plenty of questions. I guess the only question I have is this audit similar to, is the state audited in a way that is similar to this, where you make recommendations? Like the recommendation at the end is what we might consider, but you don't necessarily recommend how we might do it? Or is that a conversation that you have with districts? And then is it also something that happens for the state?
Yeah, so I think address that, I think there was kind of 3 questions baked in. The first one is what kind of an audit happens at a state level? That's kind of the first question. The second one was kind of what do you do with that recommendation for bank accounts? And then the third one is kind of, I think, more just a thematic takeaway is kind of what I got out of that. So that's the first one. The state is audited in a different fashion. We operate under rules for municipalities, that is local governments, school districts, cities, counties, things of that nature. The state of Oregon plays by a slightly different set of accounting rules, via that is a state. Their audit report is different in that it encompasses so much more activity, right? For instance, the pension liability I brought up earlier, you have a slice of this state's entire pie there, right? Their pie is the whole kit and caboodle. So the reporting is a bit different. The state's single audit report, I will highlight that, is also very different. The Oregon Department of Education acts as the pass-through entity, and for some districts, what's referred to as a cognizant oversight agency, in that they have certain obligations as an intermediary between the federal disbursements, that is the federal Department of Education gives you a grant. It ends up in your bank account via a myriad of agencies at both the federal and state level before it ends up in your bank account. So they do have an audit performed. It is a little bit different in scope, just based on the rule book that they have, as well as the legal requirements. The second one is the bank account. As far as what to do with that, that is a conversation we have with the district office, usually twice a year. They have been doing good work reducing that. To not misspeak, from what I recall, a lot of the side accounts include things that are by nature placed there due to gifting requirements from the individuals. So there are some nominal bank accounts and some CDs that, as a nature of the gift, were just told to put in a separate bank account for custodial purposes. That has increased the volume. The district office has reduced the volume of bank accounts as they've tried to right size that activity over the past several years.
I can add to that. They're down to 21 bank accounts as of current. Cynthia has been updating me as she closes them. So we've been keeping track of that. They are down to 21 currently.
Yeah, so I guess we've reduced it from 30 to 21 in the past few months since the report date. Again, the report reflects June 30, 25. So the delta between that and this evening as the 27th of January. As for your third question, kind of big takeaways to your point, we encourage the board to kind of read the whole report to the extent that they're interested. Government-wide numbers, as I referred to earlier, net position activities, that can be a bit unwieldy in that trying to understand how exactly does the state's pension obligation affect me? What are the inputs and exputs that affect net position as opposed to my fund basis activity, right? There are limited things the district can do to influence their portion of the state's PERS indebtedness. PERS bonds are one, but that's kind of a big undertaking. Outside of that, it is really a reflection of a few inputs. The numbers are confusingly laggard a year. So we're actually reporting what the pension obligation looked like as of June 30, 24, since it takes so long for that state evaluation to be performed. information sent out. It's reported laggard year consistent with the GASB, with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board standard that we're working under. Common inputs that influence that is the return of assets held in trust to pay that liability, changes in inflation expectations, changes in longevity assumptions, and healthcare trends. That is how long people will live, how costly will their needs be over a period of time. The actuaries are far better at math than I am, so they have a bit better fluency with those rather complex calculations that result in those liabilities being expressed.
Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna add one more and then I'll open it up to the
Yeah, sure.
board. Not in this district, because I feel like, and we've already actually had great information about how those accounts have been consolidated. We've had those discussions as a board, so we have followed, we get that information from Director Clute and her team. I've asked this maybe in the previous years, for districts that we hear of where boards are taken by surprise about the finances, and the audits are happening every year, and this is just asking you to editorialize a little bit, what do you think what should a board look for to make sure that that doesn't happen? Because ideally, if you're having the audit and your auditing team is letting the board know, keep your eye on this, and you're asking the right questions, but yet we hear of districts who the boards didn't know about the situation, or is that a lack of auditing, or do you have insight into what that would be?
Yes, sure. On a general basis, I don't think that's necessarily a reflection about a poor quality of an audit deliverable, but more so just a misalignment of expectations about what the audit is supposed to convey. We report retroactively. That is what happened during the period July 1 of 24 through June 30 of 25. We're not necessarily opining on or expressing an opinion via the audit process of things that boards also commonly take stock in. That is month-to-month reporting, budget actuals on month-to-month basis. Other items that are outside of the actual printed pages that go on. Common areas that we see kind of sneak up on folks kind of thematically is this Oregon State School Fund, that is the general support provided by the state. There's a very complex formula that goes into balancing that as far as payments go. In short, the more property tax dollars you bring in, the less state general support you should expect to receive as the state tries to balance equity across all the districts. And that way, budget as well as revenue projections about property tax dollars as opposed to state school fund can sneak up on folks. One of the big inputs for state school fund as well is ADM, or your average daily membership. Having a good thumb on that, is that within some breathing room of an expectation? Outside of that is just contingent liabilities. What I mean by that, there are certain expenses that you can't really do much about. You have to pay your staff. If people are sick, you have to get a sub, right? If your school bus breaks down, you need to buy a school bus. Those expenses can be expected to a point. However, if your car suddenly breaks down, you need a new transmission. That can be unexpected, but by the same token, if you have a 15-year-old vehicle, maybe that was on the horizon. Those are some areas where financial impacts happen that I guess kind of take folks by surprise. But in general, looking at the district's holistic financial health is important. That is, looking at cash flows on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, what is coming in and out. Projections about assumptions of expenses and revenue are kind of the two big ones that end up catching people by surprise if they go awry. I will also throw out I do not envy the fine folks in your business office nor anyone trying to do mission forward work, trying to balance a budget with increases in PERS contribution rates over the next few years. It is getting increasingly difficult to stretch dollars since funding is not necessarily keeping up with the increased costs of staff, which are by far and away the largest portion of your and any other district's budget. Well above 70% is going to payroll at this point. So there's only so much you can do when the state's pension obligations are rising to the point where you have to contribute more and more for each employee.
Okay, thank you so much. Did you want to add to other questions, comments? Okay. Director Clute, any comments?
I did just want to make a couple of comments about the
notes that are in the letter on the recommendation to do. Every year we have conversations with our audit team on what those are, how we can fix them. And we're trying to narrow that down smaller and smaller each year, and our list is actually quite small. As far as the number of bank accounts that we have out there, we have 2 more that we're working on, and we're targeting 8 more. That's part of that scholarship approval that we brought to you guys a few months ago to move a lot of our scholarship accounts to the Ed Foundation. So hopefully that comment will be gone next time.
Quick question, sorry,
Go ahead.
question. What's a feasible amount of accounts?
David, what would you say would be an appropriate amount of accounts for us as the district?
That is a wonderfully amorphic question. It kind of depends on circumstances. To the extent that you also have bond proceeds that you're spending down, I can assure you that those folks will want those housed in a separately numbered account. So that is kind of an externality you do have to contend with. As far as a general operation basis for districts in and around kind of the greater Portland region that y'all are on the edges of, somewhere in the neighborhood of like low teens, dozen-ish plus, somewhere in that range, if that's non-descriptive enough for y'all. A lot of districts I work with have anywhere between, as far as operating checking accounts, some of them maintain 1 checking account, 1 payroll account. LGIP, some folks like to have different accounts. They find it useful from board reporting. To not to get in the weeds with accounting, but the chart of accounts that the school maintains is mandated by the state of Oregon. It includes a few bits of delineation in the chart of accounts so you can identify items. So you could theoretically use some of those extra digits in the numbering scheme to say that a portion of one account is for this purpose versus that purpose. Some folks just like having a different account, if that makes sense, versus having to use those extra digits to break that out. But to wind back on a broad basis, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15-ish is what we often see other districts have, notwithstanding requirements from outside entities preventing reduction, right? So again, the bond money, you should house that separately. Can almost assure you that the bond folks want to see that housed in a separate account.
Okay.
So our hope is to get there in the next year or 2. It does take time to go through and restructure things and put things, as we are running with the scholarship accounts this year. The other things that we've done in the spring each year, we bring a action item or a discussion item for you, which is our fidelity insurance conversation. What level of insurance is appropriate for the district? That was on the letter a couple of years ago. That is now off this letter because we have the conversation with our board each year. And then the other piece is our board financial oversight. So we meet with a couple of board members a couple of times a year to talk just more in detail about the audit, the financials, any nutrition services audits or any grant audits or any other items that we want you to be more aware of. So that also helps with our audit and our internal controls. So all of those things have helped with bringing some of the comments down and are just examples of how we're working with the audit firm on working through their recommendations.
Dr. West, any comments?
Just appreciation for Director Clute and her team. They do a great job.
All right, thank you so much for the presentation and the extended Q&A options tonight. We appreciate the information and the work that you've done. And again, also thanks to the financial team. And I think anything else that you need to share?
No, I just appreciate the board having us this evening. Look forward to chatting with y'all probably like November, December next year about the results of the fiscal 26 audit, and hope everyone has a good remainder of their evening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We are gonna move on to action items, Comcast data service with Enrique Pignon, our technology manager.
Thank you, Chair Coffey. The first action item before you today is a request to extend the funds that we have allocated for Comcast data service As some of you may remember, as part of our bond project, we were building out our own dark fiber. The construction ran into delays, not unexpected, but ran a little longer than we expected. So we did budget for Comcast for the whole year, expecting some level of kind of delay. But the original PO that we put in was only for half the year because we expected maybe around Christmas time we'd be done. So we did go a little over in terms of the time of the construction. So our plan right now is to cut over in February, so this next month. So in order to do that, we just need to make sure that our PO is funded to the point to kind of carry us over and fund as service over the next couple of months. Our Comcast service is still right now fully E-rate reimbursable. So for those of you familiar that E-rate, the federal program, we get 80% reimbursement in our Comcast service. So even with these extended months, we still get 80% back as part of that E-rate reimbursement. So the recommendation is for the board to approve the extension of the data transmission fiber service with Comcast on a month-to-month basis because our contract officially expired, but then we continued on a month-to-month basis as part of the contract school year to extend that for an additional amount not to exceed $75,000.
So can I ask month to month, but the complete amount needed to be able to do that at the end of the year will not exceed 70,000?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to exceed that. So.
Questions from the board? Director Truax?
Madam Chairman, thank you. What department of the federal government are we getting that
The E-rate program is through the FCC.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't make me feel any better. I was afraid you were gonna say Department of Education. Fist was gonna close around my heart, but FCC is not much better.
Other questions? Look for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the extension of the data transmission fiber service with Comcast Cable Communications Management LLC on a month-to-month basis for the 25-26 school year for an additional amount not to exceed $75,000.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, Enrique, and also Ziply phone service next.
Another one with a contract extension. So similar to with the Comcast service, recently we converted over from kind of a more analog phone service to digital, moving from Ziply to Comcast on our overall kind of voice over IP service for our like day-to-day phone service, like desk phones, things like that. But we still have the old analog copper phone lines, which are used for things like fax machines, elevators, HVAC, alarm systems, things like that. We had been planning this year to kind of transition because there are technologies that allow you to basically translate from an analog to a digital to kind of reduce that cost, see which phone lines we could maybe transition. We're needing some more time with that because we found with some elevator services, also with some security concerns that we have with making sure that we have a communications device that will still function even if the power goes out. So kind of balancing the cost with also the benefits of maintaining those kind of copper lines. So with that, we are wanting to kind of add to the PO that was already approved for the year to carry us over at least through the end of the year. Hopefully, maybe weaning off some of those lines before the end of the year. We'll see. This is still within the overall budget that the board approved. So we're just adding to the PO from that budget to just carry us through the end of the year. So the recommendation of the board is to approve the increase of the amount allocated to the Ziply phone service for an additional $45,000. That'll bring the total amount allocated for that service to $90,000 for the year. And again, that'll cover us for our costs for the remainder of the 25-26 school year with the hope, again, if we can reduce some of those lines, we will.
Questions?
I move to approve the increase of the amount allocated for Ziply phone service for an additional $45,000, bring the total amount allocated to $90,000, which will cover the Ziply phone service costs for the remainder of the 2025-2026 school year.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Enrique. And action item number 3, our local service plan with Northwest Regional. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. West.
Yes, thank you. This is an action item. It's the second read, actually. In the last board meeting, we shared with you what that plan was. approval of this plan is for the core services that the Northwest Regional ESD will provide to all of the districts within. It is not for the cost of those services. So this is a reminder for those of you new to ESD funding. The ESD does receive some funding from the state. The way our ESD works is that a portion of that funding is dedicated to core services that every school district within the region has access to. An example of that for us is that the ESD hosts our student information system. And in order to do that, they do need some resources, some financial resources. So that is a core of it. They honor. The ESD also provides some opt-in services with we as a district at some point may decide that that is in fact a service that is a benefit to us. And then with the flow through dollars, with those dollars that are allocated to the ESD for Forest Grove School District that are not directly being utilized for core services, we can use that excess amount to purchase optional services if we chose to. So approval tonight is not for the cost of those services, because I think that still remains to be seen given what's taking place at the state, but for the actual items that were listed as core services. Question about that?
I move to approve the Northwest Regional Education Service District and Forest Grove School District Local Service Plan for the 2026-2027 school year as presented.
Second. Discussion? I would like to pass on thanks to Superintendent Goldman for the part of that. I thought the presentation that they provide the slides were very helpful, but I appreciated really the part where they broke it down to Forest Grove and were able to say, these are the kids that are impacted with these different programs. And I would love to see us have an opportunity to elevate that also out to the parents and community, just so that I don't think I really fully, again, understood what the ESD does and how they interface with school districts. I still don't have a complete understanding, and I think most people probably wouldn't know how they support schools, and that's some of the work they're doing too, to try to get out and advocate for what they're doing and why. And so I really appreciated their efforts to help at least a board understand the impact on those pages. And the rest of the pages. So those are my favorite pages. Any other discussion? Yeah, Pete.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being a somewhat of a veteran of education in the state of Oregon and Washington County, I always thought the ESD was the one that got me the films. So that shows how ancient I am, but they provide a service that allows us to deliver instruction without duplication of services across school districts, and that's, I think, a wise expenditure of dollars. I may have other complaints about the ESD, but that surely is full.
Okay.
So I will move to approve the Northwest Regional Education Service District, Forest Grove School District Local Service Plan for the 2026-27 school years presented. Is that right?
It is.
27. Okay.
And it has been moved and seconded, and we've had discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you, everybody. We are going to move into just a little bit of time for the board to talk about how we've been doing, where we want to be headed, and doing a little, we have reserved a little bit of time tonight to start this conversation. And just a little bit of context and appreciation for the board, who has been 3 new board members to our board. And we have had, because of quorum and the lovely state public meeting rules, we really had to do our communication carefully and intentionally and one-on-one in leadership. It's a bit fragmented, and we do the best we can to tie those pieces together. But I've really appreciated the time of our individual board members who have been reaching out and responsive to questions and communication in helping Alma and I sort of draft what we think is hopefully some action pieces going forward. So appreciation for that. I also want to put on the table tonight, that when we talk about some of these action pieces that we're gonna bring up, we recognize that this is really just within the capacity that each board director is wanting to do. And so we all are acting in the best capacity that we can with what's going on. So there isn't an expectation just because we're talking about these things that we are going to have to dedicate time that we don't have to this. But I think what I've been really excited about with this board is the willingness to do the work, to set some expectations for what we want to do and how we want to do it. So I am going to have this first slide come up. And back in the summer, when we had our retreat, we did sort of throw we did literally, we tore up all the goals that we make every year, this big list, we felt like we didn't really revisit. And we really just got down to two. What do we want to really focus on? And this board wanted to really dig deep on listening and engaging with the community. You heard questions tonight from Director Franco and also Director Lozano about what that looks like and continuing to explore if we are being effective in that. And then the second piece of advocating at the local, state, and national levels on behalf of our students and families. We really have done a good work in doing that work as we have been able to so far. But I think with both of these goals, it is now almost February, and this board has not had a chance to really talk together about how we're doing the work. And I think tonight was another example of where we tried to build it in to the early work session. And we just have been, what I have been hearing from every board member is we really just need time as a board to talk. And the only time we can do that is in a public meeting. And then following up in leadership. So what we did to sort of save a little bit of time is we did ask Dr. West to help us create a list of, we want to be mindful that we want to do work that's going to support existing work of the district and not be additional work that now people need to be helping the board do. And I think this board really understands that. We asked Dr. West to provide a list of things at this point in time, taking into account where we are in this district and the needs of our families and students and priorities and fears and needing to feel safe. Where could we plug in? And thank you for building that list. I did share that list out. We shared it with all of the board, and we asked the board to come tonight with an idea of one of these items that they feel they can really plug into for the next few months. We also asked them to come with additional items that we'd like to add to the list. And so in the interest of time tonight, what I want to start with is asking the board, are there additional pieces to this list in front of us? And I'm just going to read a couple of the things. None of these are a surprise to anyone because these things have been on our goal list before. But things like attending the town halls, going out to our Rotary Club Lions, Kiwanis, and sharing information about the schools, share district strategic goals broadly with civic groups across the city, highlight successes aligned to strategic goals, support equity for focused resource allocation. So there's a list of options, and I'm going to stop here and ask the board if they would like to suggest things we add to this.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
This is me again.
I know.
I would hope that it would also be a commitment that we listen intently and engage not just with the community, and just is a word quotes there, but also with students and staff to support the strategic plan. If we think this is going to be top-down leadership, I think we're sadly mistaken.
Okay. I added, I have 3. Was there additional?
I think I've got enough damage.
Okay. I would like to add, a board recruiting. We've talked about how to talk with the community about being on the board and what that looks like, and if that could be something we could focus on. We could add that. We've talked about this in leadership, and I know that Bethany is already working on it, especially with our new board members, but working on a really, what do we need to know packet for new board members officially, and actually that potentially could be used as a recruiting tool, I think. And the third one speaks a little bit to what was mentioned tonight. Explore ways to improve two-way communications with the public. Again, Pete, to your point, students and staff, but we've talked quite a bit individually about the role of the board within social media, and also what do we mean by engagement? And so are we able to do something as a board that provides a two-way space to open up some potential to support the district and just messaging, answering questions that need to be answered, and building trust?
Yeah, I think that's a big one.
Okay, those were the three that I wanted to add to the list. I didn't have an issue with anything else on the list, but
No, my was that.
okay. Okay, anything else to add that came to mind? Let me make sure. Okay, so then what I'd like to do is go around and hear from each person where, and it might be more than one, but what is your one thoughts you have around that, questions around that? And who would like to start? Okay, Kate.
Well, I am on the bond committee and I am on the policy committee. But I have been, ever since I've been on the board, volunteering in the schools. Once a week, I read to the beginners, kinders, and first graders to support literacy and to enrich them. Because I think if you have kids at a very young age engaged in really good literature, and I have this huge collection of pop-up books, and so I've been the last 5 or 6 years at Cornelius, but I've been at Joseph Gale, I've been in Echo Shaw, I've been at Dilley, I've been everywhere. And so I will continue that. The children love that. I've also put up and encouraged literacy libraries, a little library, where you put books in free for kids. And I also, once a month in Gales Creek, we have a community meeting. And so I always have a slot to share with the community what's really important. So those are the areas that I will continue to focus on. And I if I can, I will go to, town hall meetings and other meetings, but I really think, for me personally, instruction is really important and reading is really important. And that's my way of supporting the district.
Okay.
So for myself, there's kind of two things. I'd like to engage with secondary level schools, so like middle school, high school, and kind of do that career readiness and some sort of collaboration with local businesses or anywhere where we can connect our students that are looking to graduate here soon. That would be a focus that I would love to be a part of. So entering middle school, high school, kind of get engaged with students or get a little bit of feedback from teachers as to what are they hearing that they're looking for in a career, if they are talking about it.
And your second?
Collaborating with local organizations or business owners so that we can create some sort of either mentorship program or connections with them.
Maya, do you want to speak about this at all?
Like goals or
Well, or what, well, we'll have Pete and Teresa go, and then I'm gonna have to give some comments about maybe where.
Go ahead, I'm still trying that.
Okay, I tried to pull it up, Liz, I can't find it in all the emails, but I would like to reconnect with the Aspire program at the high school. I did it once last year and it was a great experience. I'd like to continue doing that. I think it's a great opportunity to connect with our students, but also kind of give my somewhat limited knowledge in going to higher education or going to a career right after high school and kind of navigating that and being able to answer any questions. So I think I can offer that perspective to students. I think I'd also like to engage more, and I think it's on the list, or I made it up. Coffee with, is that something that's in there, like coffee connections or
Okay,
something? I don't know if it's on the list, but something where I'm offering an ability for anyone in the community or even students to reach out and say, hey, I'd love to meet for coffee, or hey, like, we'd love to talk to you about whatever it is, that just kind of making myself more available, and offering that and being able to plug in that way.
So I'm looking at the small commitment, the general commitment list up on the screen. I would like to think that I would have some sort of cachet with local, state, and national government. And that I would be able to carry the water for education in general and Forest Grove School District in particular, but at all three of those levels. Be able to make my presence known. Get more basketball games.
that's good. You can tell. All right. Maya, I'm curious about your thoughts of where your impression of the board engagement and where we could plug in. Just which might help.
Yeah, I think almost idea of kind of reaching out to like those middle school and high schools and seeing really what kids want to do in terms of like jobs and kind of give more opportunities is extremely important. I think we have a couple programs and opportunities that are good for some kids but don't work for all. So I think really hearing what teachers have to say, what students have to say about what they want to do would be really great. I think that also goes with the Aspire program, which I think would be good to start up. Again, we have the Aspire program, it's just not many people know about it. It's not really doing much other than adding a little symbol to your name. At the end of the day, since I'm involved in that, but I've never been in like a meeting, I've never had anything like that. So I think those areas are pretty good. Another thing I had mentioned to Dr. West is kind of getting the opinions of those students that aren't usually represented. I'm not talking about like minority groups or necessarily, I guess, people taking AP classes or honor classes, but those people that don't like showing up to school, right, that don't really have motivation, that don't really find much in school other than like, I guess, a tedious everyday kind of thing. I think it's really important to understand where they're coming from and kind of see where, as a district, we can support them as well and kind of get them excited to come to school. But other than that, I think all of the goals, and we apply ourselves very well.
Thank you. I'm deeply involved with the advocacy work, but I would love to shift that to find a way that we have time as a team to get aligned around what we should do. We have Clinton here from Gales Creek, I'm Gales Creek, yeah, Gaston. Gosh, I've said that before. Gaston Board Chair, who is now LPC rep for our region, and thank you for coming, by the way. But the connections with our neighboring boards, we do have board chairs that are meeting on a regular basis now. Our next meeting will be next week. And Becky Timchuk was just assigned or signed up to be the liaison for Forest Grove at the LPC this weekend. They had each, they're trying something different for the region and really being intentional about how the regional group is going to be connecting with boards. But I think that starts with our board being very clear on what we want to do and not just what we do individually. So that's a helpful start. I think Alma and I have talked about next steps. We've talked individually with the board members. I believe there's a strong consensus that we need time as a board. And I think what has been brought up, and we'll talk more in leadership tomorrow, is building a time like this into the next board meetings for the next few months for the board. I know this board is not used to having the meetings run longer, but I think with new board members and really being able to establish a system that we use for these different pieces, engagement and advocacy, doesn't mean we'll need that time as a board every time, but there seems to be a strong feeling like we have to be able to talk together about how we do this work. Advocacy, for instance, we could easily spend an hour. We don't need to suck up cabinet time with that, but I mean, we could easily spend an hour as a board really going through the nuances of what that looks like. Who's gonna communicate, who's going to what, when we're going, what should we be saying, how are we gonna track all that? That's a conversation that I feel like we have all been having separately or with Dr. West or in leadership. But the board has not felt like we can have it together. And so again, just kind of closing that loop. But I'm curious about thoughts about that commitment of time going forward. We are headed into budget season. With multiple meetings, we have everything that's happening this week legislatively and town halls. There's plenty on people's calendars. But I also, what I've heard from this board is that we need to spend time. And maybe on the front end and set some expectations for ourselves and then have some freedom to just go and do, but thoughts on that, and then we'll close.
Oh, I think it's great. I think I would limit it to one or two things, and I'd limit the time, considering that, you know, people have jobs and people work and people get tired at the end of the day, but wouldn't have it go over an hour, and I'm picking it one or two things. That's my thought.
I agree. But I do think that we do need the time or the space to be able to have those conversations. If not, we're just checking off boxes, but that's all we're doing versus actually diving into what we can do as a board to help our schools.
Well, I'm gonna come at this a little bit differently. We meet until we get the job done. I hate to be cranky and irritable about that, but if that clock on the wall is gonna mandate the length and the depth of these meetings, then I think we're engaged. Now, I won't say in a fool's errand, but it's the second cousin to it. Because there's an opportunity, we have the opportunity twice a month to do the deep dive that we talk about. And if we're going to do the deep dive, you have to decompress coming up. You have to put all of that information and let it percolate and make some sort of sense out of it. You know that I come from another public agency that I worked with for 22 years. And if we had a meeting that was under 2 hours, we frankly felt we weren't doing our job. And there were a lot of good things that discussed. We never went to midnight, make no mistake about that. We didn't have marathon meetings, but we made every effort to start at 7 and get done by 9:30. That's 2.5 hours then. We never thought that that was untoward. I never thought that was untoward. I thought that was, nobody put a gun to my head and make me run for those jobs, those offices. And it's the same thing here. So I feel that my obligation to the public is to be able to sit here and ruminate and to legislate during our meetings and not worry about the clock. Democracy is under attack in this country. And if we think that we can speed it up and make it graceful, we're sadly mistaken. Winston Churchill said, you know, democracy is the worst form of government except for every other kind on this planet. And I think there's a point to be made there. Yeah, democracy is messy. We will be engaged in a lot of conversations. We'll have to take time. But we are doing the work, truly doing the work of the people and of our kids. And it's going to take time to unravel. If all the problems were neat, that would be cool, but they all look like spaghetti and we have to unravel. Now, there's a word picture, but I'm gonna close it.
Well, I'd just like to push back a little bit because I think if you come to the table prepared, that, that we can move through, but we can always say we want to extend the time. But if people come and they're not prepared, then it can go on and on and on. And, one of the things I've seen in the last couple of years, people come prepared and we can get things done. But I've also been in meetings, and I know you have, Pete, that people come and they're not prepared. And sometimes people, and I don't see it on this board, but sometimes people just like to take up a lot of oxygen. And I think if you're prepared, you can get things done very efficiently. But I also know that you and I are retired. Well, these other people.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is not having a meeting for meeting's sake or having board time for just no reason at all.
Right.
I think what we've all recognized is we have not had a single time since the summer to sit together and have a conversation about the work we're doing. So we're looking for a way, and I think we're being pretty efficient. I think in leadership, we really can knock out a lot of what you're talking about, Kate, like synthesizing what we're hearing and then getting ready, but then still having some opportunity for the board to just hear about, for instance, what's coming up this week with advocacy, and we are going to be in front of elected leaders, some of us on Thursday. What should we be talking about? Now, for me to have that conversation, I do have to call, and I do every board member individually have the same conversation about strategy. I can't share what anyone else is saying. And then magically we have to try to accomplish this goal. So that is not efficient for anyone on this board, but really not for a chair. And so what you see on school boards is people unable to do the work because the time is not there. So I think what we've all been asking for is everybody has wanted time, recognizing the capacity, recognizing, making sure it's going to be intentional, but also certainly recognizing it's not going to be for the end of eternity. We're talking about committing some time at each of the next meetings until we feel like we have these pieces in place. And I think I can do that reasonably. Dr. West, do you have thoughts? Okay, all right. Risa, any closing thoughts?
I know it's a lot. I think my closing thought is, I think having that space and time to have conversations is important. I feel like you having to call each one of us, I think we're losing out on that conversation and ability to think off of other people's ideas and other people's questions. And I think now more than ever, with all of the changes that are happening and things that are going to continue happening that are going to impact our district and the students especially, I think it's important that we allocate some time to have those conversations and really flesh it out and to have transparency with the rest of the individuals who I hope watch these videos. But for the rest of our community, just so that they know that we're thinking about this and that we're just not approving items and going from there.
Okay, I think that kind of accomplishes what we were hoping to gather tonight. We'll meet again tomorrow and be able to take some of this and we'll get back to everybody. So I think with that, we're gonna